At my sister's baby shower, my uncle toasted, "To real women," my sister yelled, "and not the lonely ones with degrees." I smiled and said, "Cheers," then her credit card declined. My sister chimed in with a cruel jab at me being single and educated. I simply raised my glass and said, "Cheers." Moments later, her credit card was declined in front of everyone. What happened after that exposed years of tension, debt, lies, and led to a total unraveling of her perfect life. "Do you even like her?" my cousin Sienna asked me, swirling her mimosa as we leaned against the edge of the bar at the vineyard. "Like, as a person?" I stared across the terrace where my younger sister, Harper, was being photographed in front of a pastel backdrop. She was glowing, not just with pregnancy, but with that smug, picture-perfect radiance she'd perfected since high school. "I love her," I said, "but no, I don't like her." That was the truth, and it was something I'd never said aloud before that day. I'm Rowan. I'm 37, single, child-free, and working as a professor of environmental chemistry in Portland. I've spent the last 15 years building a career I care about: long hours, grants, research, the whole deal. I own my house, have 2 cats named Pascal and Vega, and a stack of books that are better company than most people I've met. My younger sister, Harper, is 31, lives back in our hometown of Tacoma, married her high school sweetheart, Clay, who works in real estate. They're the golden couple, at least on social media. Influencer level curated. Matching pajamas, seasonal porch decor, gender reveal confetti cannons, the whole aesthetic. We've never been close. Our childhood had that subtle, painful brand of favoritism, where Harper was the pretty, bubbly one and I was the smart, intense one. Our mom encouraged Harper's pageant days and told me to smile more so boys don't think you're cold. I was 12, but I tolerated it. That's what families do, right? You grit your teeth and go to the baby showers, you show up. So when Harper sent me an invite to her shower, hosted at a winery in Woodinville, Washington, I yes. Despite the fact that she's taken jabs at me in the past about being single, about collecting degrees instead of dates, and once referred to my job as saving mud puddles. The shower was a production. Everything was color-coordinated, blush and beige and hints of sage green. There were name cards, signature mocktails, and little chalkboard signs that said things like Mimosa Bar. I wore a dark green linen dress and flats. Practical, quiet, I stuck out like a sore thumb among the floral dresses and fake eyelashes. "Rowan," Harper chirped, giving me an air hug. "You found it. GPS still works," I said, trying to smile. She looked me up and down and said nothing. The passive aggression came early. She noticed the gift I brought, a handmade baby sling from a small co-op I'd found online, and made a face. "Oh, it's not on the registry. But thanks." Then she moved on. It wasn't that I expected anything different. I'd learned not to set expectations with Harper, but that afternoon, something in me cracked. Maybe it was the way everyone acted like her whole life was aspirational, when I knew, from whispered phone calls with Sienna and my aunt, that Harper and Clay were in debt up to their eyebrows. That the house they boasted about had been bought with help from Clay's parents and still had 2 loans attached. That Harper didn't actually have a full-time job anymore because she was focusing on being a brand. Maybe it was the toast. About halfway through the afternoon, the speeches began. Clay gave a short, nervous one. His mother gushed about how Harper was born to be a mom. Then, Uncle Barry stood up. Uncle Barry is the kind of man who's been at every Thanksgiving, every birthday, always drinking too much, always saying too much. His presence is tolerated, not enjoyed. He raised his glass and said, "To real women. Women who don't let their ovaries go to waste chasing degrees. Women who know what matters, family." I froze. I felt several people glance at me. Before I could even fake a smile, Harper chimed in loudly from her chair. "And not the lonely ones with degrees." The laughter came in waves. Not everyone, but enough. Clay chuckled. Harper looked directly at me as she took a sip from her wine glass, eyes smug. I raised my mimosa and said, "Cheers," and I smiled, because I knew what was coming. About 15 minutes later, the catering manager came over with a clipboard. Harper walked with her to the edge of the terrace. I watched her fumble with her purse, trying 2 different cards. I could see her shoulders stiffen. She gestured to Clay. They spoke in hushed tones. The air shifted. Clay pulled out his phone. A few minutes later, his mother went inside to write a check. Sienna sidled up to me. She maxed out their joint card again, she whispered. This is the third time this month. I just sipped my drink and looked out at the vineyard. The air smelled like roses and tension. Later, I found Harper in the bathroom reapplying lipstick. You okay? I asked. She turned, sharp-eyed. Did you enjoy that? What? Watching me squirm, sitting there all smug like you've got your life so figured out. You think your degrees make you better than me? I blinked. I don't think about you that much. That shut her up. You're bitter, she said, because you're alone, and you know that none of it matters if you don't have someone. I stared at her, not with anger, but with something colder. Clarity. You've spent your whole life trying to be adored, I said. By men, by strangers online, by mom, and you still feel empty. That's not my fault. She opened her mouth, closed it. Clay knocked on the door a moment later. We need to talk, he said. I left. Sienna texted me later that night. Clay had found out about more hidden debt. Store cards, business expenses, even a loan taken out in his name. He was staying with a friend. I didn't go to the hospital when Harper had the baby. I sent a gift, something practical from the registry this time, and stayed quiet. Our mom was furious, accusing me of being heartless, but I was done pretending. That was nearly a year ago. Harper's Instagram is quieter now. The aesthetic has dulled. There are fewer stories, more vague inspirational quotes. Clay filed for divorce. The house is for sale. She moved back in with our parents. I see Roscoe sometimes, through pictures Sienna sends me. He's a beautiful baby. Innocent in all of this. Me, I'm still in Portland. Still teaching. Still in love with my solitude. I started seeing someone actually. Myra. She's kind, smart, and emotionally fluent. She's not afraid to be quiet. I didn't expect to fall into something real at 37, but it's... Right, I don't miss Harper. That day at the baby shower didn't break us, it revealed us. There's something satisfying about truth unfolding without force. Sometimes you don't need to yell or clap back. Sometimes you just raise your glass and wait. Cheers. Things got quieter after that. Not just on Harper's end, but in the way the family behaved around me too. For the first time in years, the passive-aggressive remarks stopped coming. Or maybe they still came, and I just stopped listening. Either way, I noticed the silence. It wasn't peaceful, exactly, more like the kind of silence that hangs in the air after someone slams a door. About 3 weeks after the baby was born, I got a call from our mom. I let it go to voicemail. Rowan, I really think you should come down and meet your nephew. Harper's been asking about you. I know you two had words, but you're sisters. Blood is blood. Please don't let pride keep you away. Call me. I didn't call her back, because here's the thing, it wasn't about pride. It was about a line being crossed for the last time. That baby shower had been the final act in a play I didn't want to keep auditioning for. I'd done my time in the wings, clapping politely while Harper stood in the spotlight, no matter how many times she shoved me into the shadows. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was just done. Sienna and I talked more after that. She was Harper's cousin too, but we'd always had a closer bond, mostly because she'd seen through the family drama before I ever did. She keeps trying to control the narrative, she said one day while we were on a video call. She posted that Clay cheated. He didn't. She just knows it'll get her sympathy, but he's already got a lawyer. I raised an eyebrow. She's trying to turn it into a redemption arc. Yep, Sienna replied, popping a grape into her mouth. Classic Harper. I started noticing little signs of unraveling. The baby shower photos stopped appearing on her feed. The aesthetic posts about family life were replaced by filtered selfies with captions like, "She's learning to love herself again." Comments were turned off on most of them. Occasionally, I'd get tagged in old photos she reposted, childhood snapshots, throwbacks. I knew it was bait. She was trying to send a message to the public, to me, maybe even to Clay. I never liked performative nostalgia. About 2 months into the postpartum chaos, Clay messaged me, completely out of the blue. Clay, hi Rowan, I hope this isn't too forward. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for what happened in the shower. And for the stuff before that. I didn't know how bad things had gotten until I couldn't ignore it anymore. I stared at the screen. Then typed back me, thanks, I appreciate that. I hope you and Roscoe are okay. Clay, we're good. I'm fighting for joint custody. I want to be in his life, just not in that life. We didn't talk again after that. But it was oddly validating, not just the apology, but the fact that someone inside the Harper sphere was seeing it clearly now. Not just the curated perfection, but the cracks underneath it all. Meanwhile, my life was growing in small, quiet ways. Myra and I had started seeing each other regularly. We met at a community lecture on climate ethics. She stayed after to ask me a question about wetland conservation. We grabbed coffee the next week, then a hike, then dinner. It wasn't a whirlwind. It was steady, curious, unfolding with intention. She never once asked why I was single at 37. She never made jokes about cats or independence or having too much going on. She liked that I was ambitious. She liked the silence between conversations, the kind that doesn't demand to be filled. One afternoon, a few months after everything with Harper had started to collapse, Myra came over while I was grading papers. She brought soup and a new plant, a trailing pothos she'd named Kevin. "You don't have to name it," she said, setting it near the window. "But he looks like Kevin." I smiled. It was such a simple thing, but it struck me no one had ever done that for me before. Not my family, not past relationships. No one had brought soup without being asked. No one had just noticed I needed something and quietly showed up. I told Myra everything that night. About Harper, the baby shower, the years of subtle cruelty. She listened without interrupting. No judgment, no cheap psychoanalysis. Just presence. "That sounds exhausting," she said finally. "I'm sorry you had to carry that alone." That sentence almost undid me. Not because it was profound, but because it was the first time someone had acknowledged it wasn't just normal family drama. That it had cost me something. Around that same time, Harper started reaching out again. Not directly, through Mom, through Instagram, through old mutual friends. "Harper wants to reconnect," Mom told me on the phone. "She said you were right about a lot of things. She's just struggling." I didn't doubt that, but struggling doesn't erase years of erasure. "She's not ready," I said. "She's just scared, there's a difference." Mom sighed. "You've always been so unforgiving." That made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because I realized in that moment that she still didn't get it. That they were all stuck in the same loop. Defend Harper, manage Harper. Blame whoever stops playing along. I wasn't angry at my mother. I was tired of the script. Sienna kept me updated. Harper was in therapy, supposedly. Clay had moved into a condo across town and was awarded joint custody. Roscoe spent half the week with him. Harper had tried to start a YouTube channel, then deleted it after 3 videos. She was still trying to create something for people to watch, something to prove she was okay. I never saw her in person again, but sometimes, when I was back in Tacoma visiting Sienna or attending academic conferences in Seattle, I'd wonder if I might run into her. A grocery store. A coffee shop. What would I even say? I didn't hate her, but I'd stopped letting her write the story. Months turned into the better part of a year. Harper's life continued to slip from curated perfection into quiet struggle, and not the noble, empowering kind she often tried to post about in sepia tones. Her followers had dwindled. The constant inspirational quotes couldn't mask the obvious. Her marriage was over, her financial life was a mess, and the one thing she could cling to, being a mother, didn't come with applause every day. But still, she kept performing, even as the stage fell apart beneath her. I kept my distance. Then, one Thursday in early spring, I got an email from the alumni office at our old high school. It was an invitation. The school was celebrating its centennial and hosting a large fundraising gala. Alumni from all years were encouraged to attend. As a small-town high school, they were reaching out to notable graduates. There I was listed as Dr. Rowan Halpern, environmental scientist and professor at Portland State. A speaker. A spotlight alum, and just beneath my name, Harper Winslow, lifestyle coach and social media entrepreneur. I blinked. I stared at the screen, wondering who had written that title. But then I remembered. Our mother was on the planning committee. Of course, I debated skipping it, but something inside me shifted. This wasn't about one-upping Harper. This was about reclaiming the version of me that had always been buried beneath her spotlight. So yes. When I walked into the gala at the Tacoma Glass Museum in a tailored navy jumpsuit and heels that meant business, heads turned. Not because I was glamorous, because I was confident. And I carried the years of being overlooked with me like armor. Myra was by my side, sleek, quiet, and effortlessly grounded. She made conversation with strangers easily, but never stepped into my shadow. She let me have the night. The evening went on. Alumni mingled, teachers from our childhood greeted us with varying degrees of recognition. The keynote speeches began. Harper took the mic first. She wore an ivory sheath dress that clung too tightly and a smile that was half brave, half desperate. Her speech was exactly what I expected. Anecdotes about overcoming challenges, references to redefining success, and a few carefully placed jabs at choosing family over pressure to achieve. I didn't flinch. I let her talk. Then it was my turn. I took the stage and thanked the school for inviting me. I told them about my work, the marshlands we'd restored, the research my students were doing, the indigenous partnerships we'd built to fight ecological erosion. I talked about legacy and how it doesn't always look like what you expect. Then I said this. When I was younger, I believed that being a woman in science meant I had to sacrifice something, softness, relationships, maybe even worth. But what I've learned is that the world doesn't get to define what a whole woman looks like. You do. Whether you're married, single, child-free, or a mother, your value doesn't hinge on anyone else's comfort with your choices. Applause. Real, generous applause, not the polite kind, the kind that sees you. I stepped off the stage and returned to my seat. Harper looked at me, her face frozen. She clapped, but it was hollow. I'd never said her name. I hadn't needed to. After the speeches, there was mingling again. People came up to me to talk, old classmates, even teachers. Harper stood by the punch bowl, nursing a white wine and pretending to scroll through her phone. No one approached her. At one point, she walked up to me. Myra had just stepped away to take a call. "Nice speech," Harper said, her voice tight. "Thanks," I replied. "I guess we've both come a long way." I looked at her. "You're still performing, Harper." The only difference now is that the audience stopped clapping. Her jaw twitched. "I'm doing my best," she said, quieter now. "I believe that," I said honestly. "But your best can't come at someone else's expense anymore." There was no fight. No insult, just that. She didn't reply. She walked away. Later, when I left, I saw her standing alone in the lobby, typing something furiously on her phone. Sienna told me later she posted a story that night. A selfie with the caption, "Some people are still threatened by your glow, even after all this time." But it was gone by morning. The true revenge wasn't humiliating her. It wasn't dragging her name through the mud. It was the fact that she finally had to stand alone, without applause, without a scapegoat. And me, I moved on. Fully. Myra and I took a sabbatical together the next summer. She led a public health research trip in Belize, and I worked with a local team on a mangrove conservation project. We watched the sun set over the ocean, read to each other at night, and didn't speak Harper's name once. When people ask me now if I have a sister, I say yes. And I leave it at that. Because not all stories have to end with reconciliation. Some end with boundaries, growth, and a life lived so fully, so truthfully, it becomes the only revenge you'll ever need. And I'm finally, truly at peace.